Hi, welcome. Welcome. I'm so happy that you're able to come out for this critical thinking event. I am Donna Warren. I'm the head of the Critical Thinking Center here at UWSP. Woohoo! And it is my great honor to introduce a true rock star in the critical thinking program here, Sarah Ross. She's an assistant professor in scenic design. And I'm really looking forward to what she has to say today, because critical thinking is often conceptualized as an individualistic endeavor. It's something that one does by oneself in one's room. And of course, we all know that it can't be that. We all depend upon each other to inform each other of what we know, to correct what we think we know but don't really know. And that requires teamwork and collaboration. And I so look forward to Professor Ross telling us more about how that is done. Sarah.
Thank you so much. And thank y'all on a Thursday night, actually towards the end of a busy week, for coming out and participating in this. I hope I meet some expectations that you may have of this event, whether you were forced to be here or whether you volunteered to be here. And I do hope, I would like to share some of the stuff that I've picked up being a professional in the theater, but I also very much encourage discussion at any time. I am on stage and I have these lights in my eyes so I can see your outlines, but if you do have a question or something, just wildly raise your hands or just shout out and we'll make sure to hear what you have to say. I'd like to take a moment to say hello to the folks at home. So thank you if you're watching this recording. Glad to have you now or in the future at this event. So I would like to encourage y'all, if you would like to, and this is voluntary, to join me in just a quick warm-up focus activity. If you would like to join me, I would ask that you just stand and for a moment, just close your eyes. If you would like to not actively engage, no worries, just stay seated and remain quiet for a moment. As you stand with your eyes closed, let's intentionally pull our focus to our breath. Breathing in on 3 counts. And out on 3 counts. As you continue to focus on your breath in your own time, take in how the breath feels as it enters your body, what's moving, what's shifting, what's contracting. And as you exhale, what is released, what is pulled. As you continue to think about your controlled breathing, take in the room. What are you experiencing, hearing, smelling? What movement do you feel around you? If you would like, start to signal your presence in the room by just snapping your fingers or a light clap on your thigh. React to the snaps that are in the room and maybe call back. Try to distinguish in your room with the volume and the noise of your snaps. Add a clap. Increase the consistency of noise. Slowly start coming back to just taking in the room. All right, thank you for that very much. What the fuck was that?
You're a chicken.
How many of y'all are sort of have your own personal routine, or maybe it's a part of a class, or maybe it's a part of a team that you're a part of that engage in sort of this intentional focus? Anyone? Yeah? How many of you is this like a completely foreign concept? Some of y'all, yeah. So for those of you who do engage in that kind of work, or it is a little bit familiar, maybe not something you do every time, but you've certainly engaged in it, why engage in such a silly activity such as the one we just did? Any thoughts?
There's the idea of soft focus, like the idea of not being centered on one thing, but being aware of the entire space. That is put into practice a lot in classes that I teach.
Professor Tyler Martin, everybody. But it's true. Like this is a very common practice that is used in the performing arts. Tyler is a professor of directing, acting. He is a professor of playwriting. And a lot of that needs, when you kind of enter a space and you're working with a group of collaborators, there needs to be a bit of time to create some of that focus. For me, I usually actually don't work with a lot of performers. I work with designers. I do work with directors. And then I get to work with people that are doing all kinds of things. And I think this is good for multiple reasons. One is that it just provides a little space between when you hit the room that you're gathering in, and then when you need to start sort of producing work, communicating with your team, engaging in collaboration. That little bit of time together allows you to have some sort of focus. It allows you to experience something together. I think it's really a good to remember that old idea that, when you leave your baggage at the door when you come in the room. The idea that humans can just shut off whatever they experience 5 minutes before their meeting or their class or this time that we're going to spend together collaborating. They can just shed that, no worries, and then focus on what's at hand. And that is just a myth. That's the most unhuman thing. We carry all of our experiences with us, but hopefully we are learning how to manage that when we're coming into sort of a teamwork, collaborative environment. So offering a brief pause to do some intentional breathing, to do a collective activity of focus, to do some stretching, to raise the heartbeat, to do some sketching, to jot down a couple of words. All of that, to do laugh yoga. Has anybody worked with Dr. Valerie Barska? She's great, and she does, in her classes and with her collaborative teams, a lot of laugh yoga, where it's like forced laughing, but then it's hilarious. So not only does it provide space where you can come together and sort of focus in the room, kind of take care of anything that you're coming into the room with, whatever happened to you 5 minutes before or a day before, and also provide a little bit of just humor as well. Not everything we do is silly. I don't guess it's sort of silly to think that a bunch of adults are doing this with their eyes closed, but it does allow for just a little breath before productivity, right? And like I said, it doesn't have to be clicking and breathing. It could be a whole myriad of activities just to start productivity in the space. Okay, so hi, I'm Sarah Ross. As Dr. Warren introduced me, and I teach, and the fortune of teaching in the Department of Theater and Dance. Professionally, I mostly design scenery. I'm coming from the Chicago area and still have contacts there, although COVID has sort of shifted a little bit of that work, so I feel very unpracticed at the moment. But I am a good designer. I'm a confident designer. I'm very eager and enthusiastic problem solver. That's why I got into this business. As a designer, that is my sole job, is to solve problems. And because I chose to work in the performing arts, specifically theatrical design, my job is to solve problems within a collaborative team. I'm very excited about this critical thinking initiative that was started by Dr. Warren here on our campus, and it's expanding throughout all of the disciplines. Critical thinking, as you all are probably aware, is one of the #1 skills that employers are looking for in their, to hire. You know, like that is a big, big, big skill, and yet we think of it as like a soft skill, or the thing that you learn in addition to all the content of your specific discipline. But creative thinking, as hopefully you are beginning to understand or have a good understanding of, is that it is enveloping all the different kind of disciplines that we engage here at the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point. I can't think of a job outside that doesn't engage in some sort of critical thinking, and it's really important in terms of global citizenry, etc. So I, today, wanted to just give you a little take on how we take that critical thinking, those ideas of it, and really spotlight collaboration, how we're using critical thinking in order to create really productive collaborative teams. I have found in my very few years of teaching that collaboration is a thing that happens in every class. You're always asked to do some sort of group work, and you're always being assessed on how that group worked. And yet, I find that there aren't a lot of intentional opportunities where we talk about what is collaboration, and what does a good collaboration look like, and what does a bad collaboration look like, and why would you want to collaborate in the first place? Because I'll be honest with you, in an industry where that's like mostly the type of work I'm engaged in, it is the hardest kind of work. It is the most difficult, because you're asking a team of people to kind of work under one vision. So why wouldn't you just ask one person with one brain to work singularly to meet that singular vision? Well, there's a lot of reasons why you don't, but I don't think it is something that's inherent. I do think it is something that has to be taught, and I hope that that is something that will happen. Taking time out to really understand, like I said, what a good collaboration looks like and what a bad collaboration looks like. I just want to take a moment at the definition of critical thinking as it stands on this campus with the Critical Thinking Initiative. Does anybody but Dr. Donna Warren remember the definition? All right, do you want to share it?
No.
Okay. So, critical thinking is a process of identifying, analyzing, evaluating, and constructing reasoning, and deciding what conclusions to draw or actions to take. So those conclusions to draw is what we are calling argumentation, and the actions to take is what we're calling decision-making and problem-solving. And while, as a designer, we are hugging that whole definition of critical thinking, I would say I am most practiced, most confident, most comfortable, and understand the relationships best with the decision-making and the problem-solving as a designer. And in the industry that I'm a part of, theater is created using the design process. We don't often speak of it that way, but the process is the same. It's super efficient. It has steps to it. You can sort of vary from the conventional steps, certainly, and innovative art can come from that, but for the most part, there is a way that folks in the industry sort of create. And that is through this design process that is very much collaborative. The thing that I'd like to start with that I feel is missing in collaborations is that I think the best scenario is that we get to choose the people that we're working with, right? That we know folks who possess certain skills, have certain strengths, that maybe have connections, and they are going to be a valuable member and fill a spot on a collaborative team. That is not the usual, though, and certainly in academia, a lot of times we're put into these groups in order to do some work, to solve a problem, but we don't maybe know each other very well. And certainly in the collaborative teams I have been fortunate enough to be a part of, there is an introduction period of like, hi, how are you? My name is Sarah Ross. I use she, her pronouns. I teach over in theater and dance. I'm a scenic designer. Like that's my little introduction. And then you go around the circle, you remember names, you remember pronouns, you kind of have an understanding of like, oh, that's very interesting. They are in, architecture. I should remember that, But having a really, having a better understanding who the people you're working with in order to organize the collaboration in a way that's going to be really efficient. We don't go through those steps. And often we feel like we're not afforded the time to do that. But I would argue it's a time saver in the end. So this is a structure that I have also borrowed from the performing arts side of theater. In fact, Elizabeth Parks, who's the director of As We Climb, started with some similar questions at the very beginning of her rehearsal process for As We Climb. And we started with, and I know that she started with some of these questions so that she could start building a level of trust in the room. In the performing arts, as in many industries actually, there is a level of vulnerability you have when you're sharing your work. And when you're creating and you're offering your creation or your problem solving to others. And so being able to acknowledge that it is a vulnerable space to be in and to build up trust, to build up an environment that really fosters bravery, risk-taking, putting your ideas out there for the group, that's quite important. There's this also similar to triangle, square, circle, which is another sort of series of questions to kind of check in with your group to gauge sort of the temperature of the group, for instance. But here are the questions in an introduction that I would offer beyond just your usual spiel of who you are. What are 3 strengths that you bring to the team or to this process? 3 strengths. What are 2 hopes that you have for this collaboration or this project? And what is 1 fear that you have about this collaboration or project? Being able to give some time for each individual member to sort of analyze that and contextualize it to the specific problem solving at hand with that collaborative team. And then sharing those thoughts with the group, I think we get more to the immediacy of some information that's very valuable to building a productive collaborative team. Other questions are, what is your priority as a member of the collaborative team? What's the most important thing for you in this collaborative team? And it could be, I just want to get this done and I want to get it done fast. But there could be other priorities that team members have, and I think being able to vocalize those also can help build the picture of what this team is and who the members are. Finally, and this is what I would love for y'all to sort of break and just share with your neighbors really quickly. What do you need to be a creative and productive human in a team? So what do you need? And it could be anything. It could be value stuff, it could be dispositional stuff, it could be really specific environmental stuff, it could be access, but what is it that you need in order to be sort of your best creative self, your best productive self? So this is a moment that I would really encourage. You don't need to get up, but you can just kind of talk with the people around you. Just get a sense of one, maybe two things from your partner here. And then I'd love to share out with the big group what some of those things are.
Okay.
Today is time to feel
I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you.
that I had
The first thing that popped in my head was like respect. Like, you know, with everybody in the group, just I think that eases my mind maybe, and then I can feel more open and be honest. I don't know if that makes sense. That was the first one that popped in my head.
Yeah, for me, it was
late or
the
I
honesty.
vibration late and
Because if
I
you're
haven't
going
had
to
to
take
process.
risks, and everyone's going to feel safe, it's like, just we're all in the same spot. You have to be honest, and give immediate feedback, and you take another route. It's not personal.
Yeah.
So, because we want the best outcome. So, but everybody has to be there.
So ulterior
That's where
motives.
they're respecting. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
I like
I would agree.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. Yes. Okay. That was pretty simple, I think.
Yes.
Interesting to hear what everybody else says.
Yeah. Are you
So I work in University College as the admin assistant, the admin assistant.
I think that
So I'm just over at
also
Albert from
that
home.
others are
And I started last
excited
week,
or
so I'm
passionate
still
as I am.
somewhat
Like I
figuring
feel
out
like you that wants
campus.
to travel
When did you
somewhere.
say it's free?
Last May.
I think so last week.
It's definitely-
Happy already doing this.
So last semester I taped a couple
Because
of
if they
these.
don't, how do I process forward if I have to be more excited?
Get out of my office space a little bit and comfort zone too. Just see other aspects of the campus.
Very cool, very cool.
It's kind of a little side thing that I help out with.
Oh, very nice.
And what about yourself?
Mutual commitment
I've been here 4.5 years.
Okay.
All right,
You're
let's
someone
come
I
back to the large group. So I would love to have y'all volunteer some of these things that came up in your discussions. What are things that are very important for you to feel really productive and creative in a collaborative team? Communication. Communication. And I feel like communication is what? Like specifically, what encompasses communication for you?
Like who plans on doing what part of the project, or just any ideas they might have.
Yeah.
Their style of, like how they work, I guess, too. Like some people like to procrastinate a little bit, some people don't, some people like to be on a tight schedule, that type of stuff.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that with communicating, allowing for as much transparency as possible in the group, so that hopefully we're sharing, as we're developing expectations, we can really offer sort of these truths about each other, but also to keep organization, to keep flow, there is a good influx of communication happening, both offering communication and receiving it. Yeah. What else? Yeah, Pierre?
Empathy with ideas.
Yes. I think, ooh, that's a whiff. Yeah, I think that's a home run kind of answer along with communication, because I think at the heart of it, you have to recognize that you're working with humans, and there is a lot of other stuff beyond the collaborative team that each individual is coming into the team with, that has experienced. There are all these different perspectives, and you're trying to work together on a single issue, a single project, but at the same time, being able to treat people with empathy and understanding And showing a bit of curiosity, a little bit of interest in your team members promotes a more humane working team for sure. Yeah, Jim.
We came up with 3: time, trust, and mutual excitement.
Oh, I was hoping for the full alliteration there.
Yeah, sorry.
Trust. Time, trust, and tacos. Mutual what?
Excitement
Excitement.
or
A little bit
commitment.
of passion, right?
Yeah.
Or lack thereof. I mean, I guess if everybody on the team is equally doesn't care, I don't know, maybe that is an efficient thing of just well, let's just get through it.
Just mutual apathy, yeah.
Yeah, mutual apathy. What is this time thing here, specifically?
I was just saying that for me to feel my most creative, I need time to sit with the thing that I'm trying to be creative about before I have to have answers or solutions.
Right.
Without that gestation time, I'm not going to be at my best.
Yeah. What's that? Oh, correct. No, now I'm gonna have flyaways. Yeah, agreed. So I'm just gonna put up here also group work versus independent work as well. Anybody else want to shout out something else?
Respect.
Yes. Empathy, trust, respect, so that things like communication can happen, Anything else? Yeah, Valerie.
Well, because we had respect as well, with a basis of respect, you can have honesty.
Yeah. Seriously. And I think that comes into that transparency aspect of if we can remain relatively honest, especially when it comes to expectations and workload and feedback on things, then I think we have a better chance of getting to a mutual solution to the problem a bit more quickly. Did I just mess up the camera?
No.
Okay, great. Folks at home, I hope you were able to come up with a list of yourself, but I think this is good intentional practice. I don't think this needs to be something that's just in theory. When you get with your group, make a contract. My colleague, Park Fetch, Jim O'Connell actually, and the members of the Advocacy, Allyship, and Access team in the Theater and Dance program have been doing a lot of work on how we are communicating what is expected in sort of these collaborative environments. How are we all agreeing, and what is it that we're all agreeing on in this collaboration together? I think without this step of coming up with some sort of contract, acknowledging all of the individual things, all of the things that individuals really need to feel valued, to feel confident, to feel like they can take risks with the team, that all needs to be sort of explained. There needs to be honesty there, and it needs to be taken in by the group. There's other things too, these are beautiful sort of dispositional things, and I feel like it can even get to the nitty-gritty. I had an opportunity to go to a couple of workshops, and so did a lot of my colleagues and students in theater and dance, with Nicole Brewer, who is a professional performer, activist, and creator of anti-racist theater. And there was many, many things in these workshops that were very much worth writing down and remembering. But one of the things that kind of jumped out at me, especially in these conversations about collaboration, is that access aspect. Her example was, I like to tell people that I like to come into a room with soft lighting, and maybe there's some chairs, but maybe there's some pillow options so that you can sort of lay on the floor or squat on the floor or sit in the chair. That's how I like to work. That's the space I want to be in. And very often we don't think about that we have a choice about that. We know that we go to the conference room for meetings. Or where is the typical student space that students can sort of gather and start working together? And maybe it doesn't mean that much to you. Maybe you can work in a closet just as well as you can work in a lunchroom, you know? But for some people, that really does matter in terms of their focus, in terms of being able to communicate, in terms of being able to hear everybody in the group. So I really like that. As a matter of fact, just today, I teach a class over in the Collins Classroom Center on the 3rd floor. And it's an awful little room. It's bright white, it's very assaulting, and it's fluorescent lights. And I just today, like know your space era, but I just today saw that there are incandescent cans. So I was like, great. So I turned off the fluorescent lights, I turned on the incandescent cans. Right, it may be coincidence, but that was the most engaged, most participation, most back and forth that we've gotten out of that class in a week. And students offered as they were leaving that the lighting was so much better in here. Those fluorescents make me like, and I'm like, yeah, they kind of make my vision vibrate a little bit. That mattered, you know, so we're not turning those fluorescents ever, we're not turning them on ever again. And I may go paint the room too, because it's awful. But these are things that I think you need to even write it down, create a contract, because then expectations for the group in terms of the workload and deadlines and all that other stuff that we got to figure out, that comes a bit more easily. We also get to understand each individual member, so we're able to kind of, you know, build that empathy towards each other. So consider making it an intentional practice, even if it's not asked of you in your collaborations. So these are the things that theater, I have learned, is really, really good at. We work really, really fast. People in theater are pretty darn efficient. There's not enough money, and there's never enough time in the space, because that costs more money. So you got to get stuff done real fast, which is great. It's an expectation. So there's a shared language, there's a shared expectation that you're going to solve problems really quickly. Oftentimes, for a professional show, you will have 2 weeks of rehearsal, 8-hour days, a week to put everything together, and if you're really lucky, maybe a week or 2 of previews before opening night. I don't usually work at places where we get really lucky, so it's rehearsal for 2 weeks, put it all together in a week, and open. So you're creating an entire world with clothed people in 3 weeks. So you got to work really fast. Now designers will come in a little bit early. Hopefully, you know, your director and your design team is at least working a year out. That doesn't happen often either. Sometimes for larger projects, you get maybe a couple years out. But in those couple of years, roles may change. People may come, people may go, and so you have to shift a little bit with that. But we're used to that. We're really, really good at understanding our process. I'm not saying that the process for creating theater or opera or dance is good. I'm not going to make a judgment on it right now, but I'm saying it is a known thing. We in the States, we know what the process is, and so we all line up and we go through that process together, which is nice because it cuts down on a lot of this developmental stuff that we need to do at the beginning. We have very established forms of communication. Stage managers who sort of manage the whole production, every day send out a rehearsal report or a performance report. And in that report is so much information. And it depends, you can totally tell the personality of the person who's writing those, but they are like the communication tool. Like, just so everybody knows, this is what happened today, this is what we're doing, this is what we're changing, we need this, we don't need this anymore, etc. That is sent out directly after every rehearsal or every performance, typically, so that the people working on the show have that information at 8 a.m. when they start their day, or whenever. We have design meetings. Here, we have them once a week. And, oh, yeah, okay. I don't know if that's good or not. I think generally we just have too many meetings in this country, but we know that that's what to expect, so we can kind of make some benchmarks for ourselves in getting some of the work done. We do a call and response a lot. When we're working in the space together, this is for safety reasons, but it's also nice because you have an acknowledgement that someone heard you. So the stage manager, for instance, if we're all in this space, will say, you know, we're taking a break, back in 10. Then everybody in the room is like, thank you, 10. We heard you. Thank you, 10. 10 minutes, I understand. I'm going to go take my break, and I'm going to be back in 10 minutes. When we're like doing the flies, for those of y'all who were in here, I was calling out, even though there's nobody else on stage, I was calling out, line set 10 coming in, and if there was somebody up here who, you know, sort of knows the space, they'd be, thank you, just to acknowledge, great, I hear you, I understand what you're doing, I'm acknowledging that. Yeah.
So this is extremely fascinating. At what point do you think students in theater, like theater students or design tech students, starts to get the idea about that empathy and acknowledgement? Like, is it something that you're kind of pushing them into, like, because there's a very specific process, or do you think that students that normally do these kinds of things already have that empathy, or like already have an excitement?
Yeah.
And want to participate?
So, cool question. I think it's a little bit of both. So I think that, I do think that the performing arts does drive, this is not across the board true, but a certain type of individual that is interested in a collaborative experience, that is interested in sort of creating something bigger themselves with a group of people. But also, I think that's like, as soon as you kind of get in it, that language and these processes are so universal in this country that even in high school, you're seeing those kinds of practices. And, you know, you're also seeing some bad habits, you know, at every place. They have, or not even bad habits, but just their own specific quirky ways of doing things. But I think for the most part, that it is a very, there are universal expectations. And I think those come pretty quick, especially when you have an opportunity to work around professionals in the industry, for sure. Yeah. But I like to think that theater sort of does get a certain type of human that is already exhibiting, is already a bit of an impact, yeah, for sure. Yeah, so that's great. I mean, that's that shared expectations of workload, it's the shared expectations of how we communicate, that really creates efficiencies in how we get things done. Now, theater is going through a lot of change right now. I find that it's a very inequitable industry, but this is a great time to be loud and participate in the change, right? And that's for a lot of different industries. That is happening in the knowledge industry. It is happening in academia, that we are really kind of reflecting on our practices and seeing who is a part of those practices and who isn't, who is invited and who isn't, and making our spaces and our processes more equitable and inclusive across the board. So a lot of work to do. I was joking with my friend Eileen in Chicago about all of the really, really, really terrible places that we worked prior, but like when you're getting started in Chicago, these storefronts who do amazing, well-reputable work, but you're like building stuff in a pile of asbestos and mold, and there's no bathroom, so you're pissing in the alley, like stuff like that. It's true. So we laugh, but those are things that need to change, right? Like, that is not acceptable. So there is a shift to kind of prioritize the artist in the art. And I think it's been the other way around for a long time. like just get the art done at any cost. So I think having a conversation that is really intentionally looking at like what is important to the individual members, how the group can accommodate that, and then agree upon it so that hopefully everything is moving smoothly, that we're expressing all of these things that we want as individual team members, giving off all of that to the group. But if something does go awry, there is there's someone who can't fulfill the expectations, we get behind schedule, a wrench is thrown into it, an additional piece of the puzzle is added to this problem that has to be challenged. Well, then we at least have a roadmap of how we can handle it. How are we going to communicate with somebody if they don't make a deadline, or if they're falling short of what we had planned, But I think you can only have those conversations when you have the empathy to know, like, this person has a whole life outside of this meeting, and recognize that and appreciate that and communicate with that in mind. Okay. So once we sort of establish a contract, then I think, I know, moving into some sort of agreed upon process to engage in the work and continuing to be really honest along the way in that process. I find the stuff that comes out of IDEO, which is a really large nonprofit organization that focuses on design for really big real-world problems, like how we feed the world, for instance. But the process is very much the same as, designing a piece of scenery or designing a car or, landscape design. It's all design. So these things I offer in tangent to some of this stuff here. Deferred judgment. So when you're getting together and you're first sort of risking your ideas to this group that you may or may not know very well, take the time as an active participant in the group to receive that information. We want to hear all the wild ideas. We want to hear the ideas that, like, there's no way that is something that's going to end up as the solution. But it may spark another idea that does lead us to a solution. So deferring judgment, just taking in the information from all your collaborators. Encourage wild ideas, build on the ideas of others. I heard you. That is something that's really interesting. I wonder if we take that idea and I have something to build off of it. It not only is a great brainstorming technique to get all those ideas out there, but we're also getting back to really appreciating the individual in making them feel valued in the team. Stay focused on the topic. So I think that is something that I like to include in the contract. And this I certainly have experienced in staff meetings where we're all very intelligent, passionate human beings, and we have a lot of opinions, and they're very, very good and supported opinions. But it is not on the agenda. So this is not the time that we have agreed upon to sort of tackle that. So take the note, and let's get back and focus on why we're gathered here today. Now that doesn't mean that once you're doing active group work together, virtually or together in a room, that you're not being flexible and adjusting. Okay, we had set this milestone today, but it looks like that's actually not very achievable because this and this and this. So yeah, you shift, you change up what the plan, and that's okay. But if it's just being able to, recognizing you have an outlet to introduce this new idea, don't do that, try and hold it back, or make sure that the note is taken so that you can visit that in the future at a better time. One conversation at a time, again, that's another focus thing. Making sure that we're hearing all of the ideas from the team members, any of the research they're bringing into it, their knowledge, and that we give that space and time for consideration before we move on to the next thing. Be visual, be all of it, you know? Use your voice if you're very good at speaking. I do not have a command on the English language, but I'm getting better because I'm getting more practice in my job, which is good. But I can move, I can draw, I can be loud, and I can be very quiet, and I can be animated. And that may put you off, but that is sort of how I tend to communicate. So be all of it, and maybe something will strike a chord with somebody. And if it's too much, be honest. It's like, if you could not yell at me in this meeting, I would really appreciate that because I find it a bit assaulting. Like, that's a good, honest thing to be. And then the last thing, these are especially for these early sort of brainstorming meetings, is just go for quantity. Don't edit yourself in the very beginning, you know, especially when you're getting to know people. Just produce those ideas, because the quicker this team kind of understands what each member can offer on their strengths in terms of how they're collaborating, the things that they're saying, the things that they're producing visually, the better work can get done more quickly. Any questions or further comments about any of those suggestions from the IDEO Field Guide to Human-Centered Design? It's a very, very excellent resource for designers.
Here.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Everything that you just mentioned, it seems that, do you envision this, what size of groups to be really working with? Like my problem is, I do a lot of the things that you're mentioning, and I'm trying to do like a group feed, like brainstorming session. But this is one of the times that Cal has mentioned that some of the students need time, right? They need like to build that excitement so that they can come up with ideas.
Yeah.
But I don't know if there's some sort of strategies, or if it talks about in the book, that if it's a smaller group versus a larger group, would students or people in general open up to more of that, like creativity, respect, like excitement about collaborating?
Yeah. Thank you for that question. I mean, it's super scary to share ideas. If you're in a position where you feel you have the agency and the power, and sometimes you do and sometimes you don't, to be able to say, this is what the group needs. Like, we don't need 8 people, we need 3. Because if you're just producing a collaborative team to solve a problem for the sake of making people work together, that's silly. If the problem is needing 3 people, then you should have 3 people. So looking at whatever if it's in the form of a classroom assignment, or if it's some sort of challenge that you're visiting with, wherever else, understanding who needs to be at the table. What kind of knowledge do we need? What kind of dispositions do we need? And when we sort of decide who's at the table, reflecting and going like, right, well, who isn't at the table that we really could use? And it may be at the beginning of a collaboration, you start off with 3 people, but recognize quickly, oh man, we don't have this person or this person or this person with these skills or this knowledge. So we're going to add them to the group. In terms of just trying to, in teaching collaboration, I think that just has to be a lot of self-discovery. Not everybody's super excited about group work. In fact, I would think it's sort of the opposite. That because the nature of in academia is that you're always being forced. Like, this is a really important skill. I'm not really going to give you the roadmap for this skill, but you just make sure you work with this group. But I do think that if you are honest about what your priority is as a member of the collaborative team, and you take in what everybody else's is, you have a better chance of offering an environment where people will feel more welcomed to participate in a way that is helping the whole group. Well, I mean, the only reason we want to collaborate is why? Like, why collaborate? Honestly, it's really hard. Why do you, like, for those instructors out there, why do you assign group work? Yeah.
Because the hope is that ideas will be better when the group is working towards a solution, and if I've taken this idea and this idea and this idea, we'll find the one that's the most exciting.
Yeah. I mean, the reason why I'm so invested in it is because of that reason. That I know I can produce good work. I have confidence in that. It may be false confidence, but I do have confidence. But if someone else at the table has a better idea or starts a chain of thought that leads me to a better idea, my name is on the project at the end of the day. So I am absolutely going to go for the best idea. I'm going to give credit where credit is due, and that's something that theater is getting better at. But we're elevating the work of the individual. We're making the individual work so much better. That's what a good collaboration should look like. Your best work, but then kicked up 10, 15, 20%. And it's not only seen in the work, the quality of the work, it's felt. Having been a part of not very many, but some really, really amazing collaborations, it is like peanut butter to the soul. It sticks to you and it does not go away. It's an awesome feeling. Well, my gosh, we were able to team teach during the LEAD program this summer. I've never team taught before. We had four instructors that Dr. Warren led with Dr. Alex Ingersoll and Professor Dave Detman. And I got to be a part of that team, and it was incredible because not only was I able to show off my knowledge, which I like to do, I worked hard for it, and offer my enthusiasm to the team, I got to see how you got to really feel, you got to take in and learn at the same time that you are, in fact, giving your knowledge to the project. So you're walking away with a lot of value. You're walking away with, yeah, we finished the project and we solved the problem and we got paid, and you come away knowing so much more, creating human connection, which for a shy person feels awesome, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to work with people and I think they like me. And you get to learn from other disciplines, from other folks who have expertise in other areas. That's what a good collaboration is. A good collaboration is not, let's just get it done. You can't meet, you don't want to do it, I'll just do it, it's fine. Or not trusting your partners to be able to participate, or there's like a disconnect of what we're doing, and what's expected. That answer was super long.
That's awesome.
But, so this is all talking in the ideal. We just have a few minutes left. But I do want to get grounded in some of these ideas that, sometimes a collaboration is just not necessary. And sometimes thinking about what the collaboration should look like really we need to have that investigation so we know what is appropriate in terms of the group size, for instance. But we see a lot of problems, even if we're being honest, even if we're practicing empathy. So someone else's good idea takes what we see, like that I see in some new designers, for instance, and in some students too, that the ideas are so precious, right? And if you have an idea that is maybe perceived as a bit better than mine, but it's in my area of expertise. So if some costume designer has this really great scenic design idea, and that's the way the group decides to go, Well, that's awesome. That does not take away from my value. I still have to do my job. I still have to incorporate those ideas. I'm still a member of the collaborative team, and I'm going to take that great idea, and I'm going to take that great idea, and I'm going to take this great idea, and I'm going to make it awesome. So it doesn't take away from your worth and your value, and so there's no need for defensiveness, right? And I think folks who haven't experienced a good collaboration, it's the defensiveness that gets in the way. You're not supposed to be talking about that. That's my area. No, it's our area. And if we're just brainstorming, let's get as many ideas as possible. I also have, just take the note. Don't get defensive, just take the note. Not focused, we already talked about that. There was a lot of head shaking about like getting unfocused in meetings, etc. So making sure to stay on track that you are always going back to what is the priority here? What's the priority of the individual? And then what is the priority of the team? What is the problem? Let's look at it again and make sure we're still on track. What is the priority here at UWSP as an institution? Do we see that priority in our practices? You know, do we see that priority in resources and where they're going? I don't know, something to consider. Agreeing on an answer before you know the question. Woo! That one. In these rehearsal reports, I get the note, because I work props a lot, I get the note, table needs to be larger and rectangular. That note is not a useful note for me, because you just provided an answer to a question that I don't even know what it is. So if you're going to work collaboratively, you don't have to work so hard in that note. Director, stage manager, whoever made that note, choreographer. Instead, give me the question. Like, what is the question that we need to solve here? And then let's just have a little group think about that, and then somebody inevitably will come up with the best solution. The best solution may be a larger rectangular table. It may not be though. So know what the question is. And I'm going to end with just an uneven or unbalanced power dynamic. And I think a lot in academia we really see this. I have the privilege of being able to work side by side with students, but it is a stressful relationship because there's still the mentor-student relationship that's happening there. But at the same time, we're trying to come together as fellow designers, managers, technicians, directors, etc. So being honest about or feeling like you can be honest about the process and being able to share your thoughts, but also acknowledging as the team, what is that expectation? Is there a hierarchy of power here? And do we want that? And if it exists, how are we going to manage it so it doesn't belittle any of the members of the group and everybody feels that they can contribute and everybody feels they have agency? I got 3 more pages here, but it's dinner time, I think. Are there any questions or additional thoughts about any of this collaboration information I've vomited out on you this evening? All right then. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. I hope you got a little bit of something of value out of this, and I wish you all the best as you end your busy weeks. Bye.